and then the way they went after us who submitted the legal process for a religious exemption, the way they went after us was very revealing.
We are so excited today to have Drew Forsberg, who is a retiring Navy SEAL. And he is going to talk to us about how you started to, did you just wake up one day and become a Navy SEAL? Or was your lifelong dream?
Just woke up as one.
Yes. You look like you're ready to wake up as one. But
that's some people how they get in. Myself, I graduated in high school in 99, and I was a surfer. And now this is a little bit odd because I grew up in New York. Yes, that's why it's so near and dear to me. So I grew up on the east end of Long Island, small little beach town, no stoplights. It's kind of like where all the tourists would go and have their summertime vacation. And then in the wintertime, it's quiet, desolate, nothing's open.
Wait. You surfed off of Long Island.
Right.
Where it's super cold all year round in the water.
It's only cold in the wintertime. In the summer times, it's gorgeous.
So it has really great waves.
It has really good waves for the East Coast. So comparatively to the rest of the East Coast, Montauk Point, Long Island, has some pretty good waves. And I grew up in a family of fishermen, so I was constantly on the boats for days at a time, never seeing land. And so being around the water was kind of a way of life for me. Learned how to scuba dive at 13, started surfing at 14, and that kind of governed my whole life. So when I graduated high school and had university opportunities and scholarships, I was like, no, I'm just going to go to college, community college, out in Santa Barbara and just surf. So I did that the first year, and then the next year, a buddy of mine who I did surf contests with was up in Santa Cruz, and he was like, dude, the waves are way better up here. So I moved up there the second year, and then I was thinking about where I was going to go next, took a semester off, and that's when 9/11 happened. So within a week after 9/11, from being a pot-smoking surfer, I was like, I need to go join the military. Walked into the Navy recruiter's office and told him, I want to get as close to the action as possible. What kind of program would I look like? And so he told me about the SEAL teams.
Okay, so from surfer to SEAL.
Yep.
In 1 week.
Pretty much.
Wow. What was that process like?
Let's see, I remember coming home on 9/11, and that particular day, the surf was really, really, really good. And so my brother and I and our cousin got on our family ferry to a remote surf spot, and we watched the towers fall in this like little, TV antenna, rabbit ear antenna TV.
You watched them?
We watched them fall on the TV, and it was like, oh my goodness, the surf's really good today. Feels like surreal because I'm going to go have a great time today.
So you had no idea. You weren't watching like the rest of us on TV. You just happened to be in the boat.
I happened to be on the ferry going to this other island, and we had heard about what happened. Somebody hooked up a TV. Everybody on the boat is going to have a great time on this island, and we're watching it all happen. And then we get off the boat, continue as planned. We're going surfing, and I'm seeing guys out in the water like, hey, how long you been out? And they're like, oh, dude, I've been out since, first light. Do you have any idea what just happened? No. So it just felt very surreal that whole day, and the rest of the week was really good as well. But internally, I knew, like, I'm only going to be a surfer for so much longer. I've a major decision to make. So when my dad told me, he was like, you should think about joining the military. That's what I would do. I was like, good, because that's what I want to do.
Wow.
And I did a little bit of research, found out about, okay, what is the Army? What are the Marines? What are the SEALs? My dad suggested it to me, but I really didn't know much about the program or how to get in. So when I showed up at the recruiter's office and said, I kind of watched the Charlie Sheen movie back when I was 9 years old. Can I do something like that? And he was like, yeah, if you make it through the program, it's all yours.
So what was the actual process and the training as a Navy SEAL? Because that's not for the faint of heart. Can you describe in grotesque detail?
Sure. So
Awesome.
I was not an athlete. I was terrible at sports, which is why I started surfing. I could just kind of do my own thing, not get teased about being very bad and uncoordinated and chubby at the time, and I could just go be me out in the water. So I was not an athlete. I knew that was going to be a challenge. So when I decided, all right, I want to go to boot camp, I want to go pursue the SEAL team and do the training, me and my brother had already planned this surf trip down to Costa Rica. So we did 6 weeks down there in Costa Rica, and I would just wake up early and run and do some push-ups and get wet and sandy on my own and just kind of get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that was a great opportunity for the Lord to kind of like tell me, yeah, you got a little more preparation to do before I could finally go to boot camp. I went to boot camp in February 2002. That's about 2 months. And then they would set you up with this training, your specialty training for the Navy. In the very likely event that you don't make it through SEAL training, they can plug you and send you out onto a ship.
Okay, does everyone get to go to that training, or is it, do you get a weeding out process?
At the time, that was the pipeline. So boot camp to your trade school and then to SEAL training.
Right.
Now they've made SEAL training the trade school. So guys finish boot camp, they get to BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL training. They do that, and then when they fail out, then they have to get rebooted somewhere else and to the needs of the Navy. But right now, BUDS is that next step after boot camp.
Right. So it was intense. You're in boot camp and
yeah, boot camp was pretty easy. I was like, I don't know if this is really getting me ready.
Boot camp, SEAL training.
Yeah, and then once I got to report there, and the rubber met the road, it was an intense 6 months for sure.
What was that process like in that 6 months, going from surfer guy, not feeling like an athlete outside of the water, to suddenly one of the hardest? It's considered special forces, but like beyond.
They're beyond.
Beyond.
I mean, it's mental, it's physical,
right?
It's everything.
Oddly enough, surfing kind of kept me going. And so all the SEAL training is in San Diego. So poor me, Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, now San Diego. And so I'm still surfing on the weekends. And there were certain points where we'd be doing our training. We're on the boats and we're got to like paddle out past the surf and paddle it back in. And we got guys in your boat crew. It's all always arranged by like your height line. Mm-hmm. So I'm in the shorter boat crew at the time, eventually the Smurf crew. And you've got guys in there that have like never seen the ocean. They're from Kansas. They watched the Charlie Sheen movie too, and they want to go do this thing. And so I kind of got to essentially be a very good asset when it came down to the surf passage.
Right.
I knew where to spot the rip currents, how to take the highway out through the surf zone and win some of the boat races that way.
So knowing the water helps. And
and when it was like big, I was so excited. Yeah, I'm not surfing on a board, but I'm surfing on a boat, and it was still a lot of fun for me in that regard.
Okay.
So did you feel like you reached a point ever where you felt in your training like this sense of manhood? Because you said you graduated in 99, correct? And you joined in 2002? So that's really young. Did you feel like you had to grow up overnight, or did you feel a sense of manhood going in? Do you feel like that crafted you into one emotionally, physically, spiritually? Did you ever, because I know some people describe womanhood, manhood as, I had this moment where for the first time they experienced something and it's almost like fully feeling like they're stepping into that role. Did you experience that in the SEALs?
I wish I could point to a moment like that, and I guess I can't think of one right now. It was a very like slow progress because all right, you get done with Hell Week. That's within the first couple of months of you reporting there. You still have so much further to go.
Right.
So it's not like, oh, good, I'm done, I've arrived. So you get through Hell Week, and then there's like some scuba diving training where it's very intense underwater things that they're doing to you, and a lot of guys fail out of that. So as soon as you finish Hell Week, you're like, well, now I got to make it through Pool Week. And then when you get through that, now there's the land phase where you have to pass land navigation. And then there's still more training after that called SEAL qualification training to know that you're still not done. When you're finally done with SEAL qualification training and you get your pin and you're officially a SEAL, now you report to your team and you're not deploying for another year and a half. So now you've got to prove yourself because you're the new guy. You went through training that everybody else has done. You're not special. And so now you need to prove yourself amongst these other guys who have already been there, done that. Are you even worth being on the team? When you report to a team, you owe them 2 deployments. So after you get done with your new guy tour, all right, big deal. You've completed 1 deployment. So you're still like, I've not arrived. That's it's about a 2-year tour.
Okay.
So when most guys sign up, they owe the Navy 6 years because the first year and a half, 2 years are just training.
Right.
And then you get to your SEAL team, and you owe the SEAL team 4 years. And in those 4 years, you get 2 deployments.
Right.
All right, so now you've done 1 deployment, then you get done with 2. All right, now you've done the bare minimum as a SEAL. So you still don't feel like you've arrived because you're not in a leadership position. You've done the bare minimum. And so you're constantly looking at your peers and the other guys that you're working with, and you know that you have so much more to offer if you stay in longer.
Right.
So you never really have that moment of like, great, I'm arrived. I've officially achieved this like sense of manhood, because you're always like looking to the right and left, and you're like, man, I still haven't done that. You know, there's still so much more to do. So that I guess that's a unique kind of difference.
Sure.
But you also were, it sounds like you were very close to your brothers. You were raised by a dad who was in your life.
Yep.
So, I mean, you had a really good start. And it just seems like your life was kind of pivoted to being in a brotherhood.
What was that like transitioning to that kind of brotherhood? Because obviously that's different than the suburban, bachelor dad life that not everybody does every single day. So what were your experiences as a Navy SEAL?
Well, one of the great things is like nothing inside the teams is sacred. So you can get teased for anything. And if somebody finds something, your red button, they're going to press it until it doesn't bother you anymore. So it's really good character development, I say, inside that brotherhood, because you have to learn how to like just laugh at yourself when you make mistakes. And that makes you, I think, a better human being, because now you know that if you don't own up to this weakness or this mistake that you made, you're going to get razzed for it, or worse, you're going to be ostracized for it. So your best bet is just own up to it, laugh at it, own it, and improve.
Do you feel like you guys are stripped of your emotions to degrees, and is that really hard to come out of, like, once you retire? What is that like?
Let's see, now that I'm retiring, one of the things, I know you guys brought it up, the Beyond the Brotherhood program, it's a nonprofit started by a buddy of mine who just got out. He recognized that within 4 months of him getting out, 4 of his friends had died by their own hand, all SEALs. And so he's kind of trying to crack this code. All right, what is it that gives guys a greater sense of purpose when they leave that brotherhood? There's all the suicide training and all the other stuff that I'm sure briefs well for the officers, but if I tell you not to think about a pink elephant, what do? You think about a pink elephant. So when we tell you, like, don't think about suicide, what is everybody doing? Or, oh, these are the red flags, what's everybody doing? I guess if I was to commit suicide, this is how I would not send up red flags. You can't help but think about how you'd plan it out. So all of that is, he's thinking, all right, how do we give these guys purpose? So when guys get out, they need to have a new job that's going to be very fulfilling. And on the flip side, they need to have that sense of community with the brotherhood, whether they did 6 years or 20 years, they need to get reconnected. So what he's got there is partnerships with other organizations, other companies. He's got an MBA, so he knows some people, and they recognize that SEALs don't just shoot guns, jump out of airplanes, and blow stuff up. We do, but we also have to run the entire enterprise. So after you get done with those 2 tours at your team, you're expected to now go be a trainer at maybe one of the, for BUDS, a BUDS instructor, or you're training the SEAL platoons who are getting ready for deployments. So I taught urban warfare for a couple of years. We have to come up with that curriculum. We've got to teach new tactics. If something comes off the battlefield, like, hey, this isn't working, this is working better, we need to immediately implement that into our daily training and our curriculum. Somebody's got to do those schedules, somebody's got to get those planes, somebody's got to get the parachutes. We do all of that. So when he's educating these other company owners, like, hey, these guys are they're a lot more equipped than just shooting guns and doing security.
Yes.
They know how to organize and run things.
And lead.
And lead guys. So through those kind of like partnerships, he's able to get one of our guys who got out after about 8 years with Western Steel. It's kind of funny, I got to talk to one of the CEOs, and he's like, yeah, your guy Mario, who's working for us, he's great because Western Steel and these steel workers kind of act like a bunch of rebel rousers, and he knows how to lead them because he was in the teams and kind of can do that.
And they have respect for him.
And they respond well,
Yeah.
exactly. There's another guy out in Utah, and Deer Valley is looking at expanding all of their ski resorts by another 4,300 acres. And our guy, as part of Beyond the Brotherhood, is getting plugged in there for a job opportunity. And then they even, Jimmy knows me, and he knows the CEO of Pray.com. And he was like, Drew, I think, your values align very well with Pray. He knows my testimony and everything. So that's how I'm working this internship with them now.
So I'm curious, when you retired, did you, and you don't have to answer this, is too personal, did you struggle with depression and suicidal thoughts?
The big issue for me was a newfound anxiety because of the way our senior officers have been behaving. And for the last 10 years, it's kind of been like I would just shrug it off like, oh, it's just another selfish senior officer. It's just another selfish senior officer, self-serving. But then with the whole pandemic, and I know that's a hot thing, but the way they behaved and then the way they went after us who submitted the legal process for a religious exemption, the way they went after us was very revealing. So now anytime a senior officer is talking, I can't help but think I have no trust in the institution. It's completely self-serving. I've lost people. I've had guys lose their legs. We've killed innocent people, or I should say innocent people have died because self-serving officers wanted to get their fit reps filled up so that they could make that next rank. And we were the ones that took the fall for it. So yeah, I guess in that way, I kind of have some anxiety that I've had to talk to counselors about because I kind of just need a vent about it.
Well, I think it's great that I'm doing counseling. I think counseling
We just spoke to two counselors too.
Spoke to them. I do want to talk about this because I don't think it's just, naturally it would be people in the military, but I personally don't have a lot of trust in a lot of leaders. And what you hear around the country is that is true. We have lost trust in them being honest with us and even watching our backs because we feel like they've been sold out to a dollar or something else instead of the best interests of the country. So how do we handle that as citizens and as SILs?
Let me think about that. Can you summarize that question again?
I just feel like there's a lot of people in the country who have lost a lot of respect for people who are in positions of power, be it military, Congress, across the board, you name it, and even corporate.
Yeah.
Because being mandated, being asked of us to give up our freedoms continually. Whether it's the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, whatever. It feels like they're sacrificing the Constitution for their bottom line. Because, we know that people go into certain positions and they come out far richer, far more powerful than when they went in. And that's not the reason we serve.
Yeah.
Yes, we deserve, everybody deserves a decent salary, but I don't trust as an American citizen a lot of people in power.
Yeah, and I think just having that awareness that's happening, a lot of us are kind of more and more aware that the system is rigged and there is a lot more corruption than we ever thought. And so that's just kind of, I think, part of that upswell and eventually more accountability. They can't take our support for granted anymore. We demand that kind of accountability for it. And so voting with your feet, that's why I'm getting out. I thought I was going to be a 33-year guy. I had, I guess, checked all the boxes for the lack of a better term. I got all the right qualifications, so the Navy wants me to stay in. But I had to sue them for the right to stay in. And now that I sued them for the right to stay in, you know what? No thanks. I'm out. So I'm turning down a promotion and turning down all the extra pay, all the extra benefits. I thought this was going to be the lifelong career, but all right, Lord, I always told them I'll stay in as long as you tell me to. And now it seems like, all right, this is it. This is the time, 22 years.
So what has it been like transitioning out? Do you feel like you've almost had to refine? You were speaking earlier about having a sort of identity when you're with these people who are like brothers to you. Do you feel like it's refining and a completely new identity, maybe even emotions or lack thereof, now that you've finished? What's that been like for you?
I think it's always just adding to my identity. Some guys have talked about completely changing it. I found that my life has been more like adding to it. So I grew up on fishing boats, and then I became a surfer, and then I became a SEAL. So there's a lot of, correlation there. All right. Then in 2005, I became a Christian. Then a couple years later, I got married. Now I've got 4 kids. And so I've never stopped being a waterman. I've never stopped being a surfer. I've never stopped being a SEAL. I've never stopped being a husband or a dad. It's just one thing added to my identity as I get older. So now that I'm getting out, the next thing that I want to add to that is, being successful at least and understanding the business world. One of the other things, one of my kids, I had a hard time kind of identifying with him. My oldest girl wants to be a missionary. That's easy. We can put in that training. I love it. My next girl always loved hair and makeup, and her mom's really good at that, so I'll let her mom deal with that. My youngest wants to do dangerous stuff. He already told me one day we're like getting smashed in some big waves, and he's like, "Dad, I want to do stuff that's dangerous." Cool, buddy. I'm probably going to keep him away from like dirt bikes, but I want to feed that. But my older boy, he wanted to be a farmer ever since he could pronounce the word cow. Like, he is just in love with cows and all things growing. And I always want to like make sure that my kids, just like a good gym teacher, they have lots of experience in lots of different realms. I'm going to force them to do some things and get uncomfortable. So he might not like jiu-jitsu. I don't care. You're going to have to do it. You might not like math, but you're going to have to do it, right? You might not like surfing, but you're going to have to do it. Dad's good at these things, and I want to make sure that everybody is at least equipped at a basic level. But he wants to learn farming. All right, so let's feed that. And I found a film called The Biggest Little Farm. Have you guys heard of it? It's fantastic. It's a story of a couple who goes and buys like this old a lemon farm. So monocrop, that's all they do, it was just lemons. And they're like, okay, because this was just lemons, we know this is not the way that it should be. Well, how should it be? It should be like old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and on that farm he had everything, right? You name it. So that's what they did. They took this old soil-depleted monocrop lemon farm and introduced all the different animals and all these different kinds of orchards and crops and everything. And now they created this whole ecosystem.
Yeah, we call it a permaculture in the farming world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that got me very interested in, oh my goodness, this is how God intended us to steward the land. When I came to faith in 2005, it was a great deal due to creation science. I kind of grew up, obviously publicly indoctrinated with whole billions and billions of years ago in a land far, far away, something exploded, and it turned to soup, and boom, millions and millions of years later, here we are. And I remember talking to a friend who was getting into creation science, and he was telling me about it, trying to tell me about it, and I was like, bro, you're an idiot. I aced college anthropology and evolution's a fact.
I have a piece of paper to prove it.
Yeah.
From uni.
And he goes, hey, you know those people that say they're really open-minded but never hear your side of the story? I'm like, yeah, I can't stand those people. It's like, well, you're kind of being one right now. Fair point.
Great to have friends that really tell us the truth.
Yeah. So
the wounds of a
he was like, why don't you just watch this creation stuff that I'm looking at? So it was a guy named Kent Hovind, and at the end
yes.
You know him.
Yeah.
And at the end of those 7 DVDs, I was like, my goodness, I have been lied to my entire life. And all those questions I had at second grade, like, hey, teacher, how do they know that? Because they're scientists, Drew. Okay, but seriously, how do the scientists know that? That's enough questions. You want to find out, you go be a scientist. All right. So I always had these questions in the back of my mind, but I was told I'm stupid for asking them, and realized that evolution was a lie. And if Genesis chapters 1 through 11 could be true, then the rest of the Bible could also be true. Because up until that point, I remember being on a college campus and somebody trying to witness to me, and I was like, dude, if Jesus didn't know about evolution, he's not God because he doesn't know everything. And if he did know about evolution and taught about Genesis, then he's a liar. So Jesus is not God, period, no thanks. So Genesis 1 through 11 needing to be true was incredibly huge for me. And then I had also already read the Da Vinci Code, so I wasn't really sure about this Jesus guy. Again, same friend was like, well, it's causing a lot of controversy. Why don't you just pick up a rebuttal and see what Christians are saying about it? Well, fair point. And so by the end of that, I was like, all right, the whole Bible could be true now. I guess I'm a Christian. Well, last step, he invited me to church for a Christmas play. I grew up Catholic, so I was like, I don't really like church. Sit, kneel, stand, recite after me kind of stuff. But this time, it was a Christmas play, so I thought, Jesus, Mary, Joseph, the manger, sure. And it was all about a modern woman who was a faithful church attendee who was super stressed out about Christmas, and her friend came over and just like, hey, well, why don't you just think about the day that you got saved so you could be thankful about it. Now, I did not know what born again meant. I thought born again was something where you grew up in church and you went and partied for a while, and then you come back, and now, voila, you're born again. I did not know it was a Jesus term, that you must be born again. So December 18th, 2005, at the end of the play, the preacher was kind of like reading my mind. He was answering every rebuttal I had in my head, like, well, maybe not tonight. Well, I kind of got to clean things up first. Well, I don't know if I really want to get super straight and narrow. He was reading all of that. If you're out there and you're thinking this, and if you're out there and you're thinking that, so finally by the end of it, I raised my hand and got saved.
Would you say that salvation ultimately gave you a sense of identity? Did you feel that really was instilled in you from the time you were saved up until now, and so that hasn't been as much of something you've wrestled with, say, as some of the other brothers?
That's a really good point. Yeah, probably knowing that I had found the truth, right? Mm-hmm. From A to Z. I didn't really know how it all worked, but I was willing to put faith and stock in Jesus died for my sins. He really did absolve me from all of it by dying on the cross. Not really sure how all that works, but I'm gonna put faith in it. And I know enough I can also not just put faith in him, but his entire word. So now I'm like hungry to learn more about the Bible. And I've still got SEAL training to do. I had finished my first deployment by then. I've still got to do a second deployment. We have to do lots of training inside the U.S. before that deployment. So I'm rarely in church. And then when I deploy, I've got nothing. And thankfully, the Lord gave me a horrible duty where I had to go advise some Filipino Navy guys on their operation. So I was the one American out on this boat eating fish heads and rice, as well as other terrible things. But a guy who was setting up the radios for me as I was about to embark on this mission, he found out I was a new Christian. And so he took that old wheel iPod that I had and loaded me up with a bunch of content so I could get this digital discipleship from David Jeremiah, which was great because it's very like in the Bible, very expository type teaching. And then the other help was a guy named Chip Ingram, which was very like practical tips. All right, now that you're a Christian, this is kind of like what Christian living kind of looks like. And that was a big struggle coming out.
So you're being mentored.
Yeah, because I get done. I'm loving being part of the brotherhood. There are certain things though that are not really moral. And you kind of just run into that kind of life. And that could happen anywhere, whether you're a waiter at a restaurant or working at a gas station. Like, what do guys want to do, right? They want to go party. And so now I would go party after I got saved, but now it felt icky. It didn't feel right. And being on that deployment and kind of being removed from a lot of that and being kind of educated on this is what Christian living kind of looks like, I do want that. And I was able to kind of feed that part of my soul where I could take a bigger and better stand on my convictions as time went on.
So everything, it's fascinating when you tell your story, how everything has been an addition. The Lord has just added and added and added to make you the man that you are today.
Yeah.
And so even to the point, I find it fascinating that the Lord was gracious to you to give you child number 3. Because you had to go to a different place, you had to learn a different outreach, and now you have a new addition. I mean, you now have a gardener a farmer in the family.
Yeah. So we're in Hawaii now, and I'm like, because of that movie, I'm like, well, I can't go buy a 100-acre farm, but maybe I can farm this little 6,000 square foot lot.
Can. They're people.
So we've got some taro, some sweet potatoes, some papaya trees, and in Hawaii you have feral chickens running around, and so they come over and they have a safe haven in our little yard, and so now we'll trap them in little cages. We put wheels on the cages, so those cages go over the grass. They scratch. Now I have pasture-raised feral chickens. We get their eggs, and when the roosters come by, we definitely make sure to trap them because we don't want them waking us up in the morning. So we have roosters too.
I have never heard of a feral chicken. I mean, not in North Carolina. Everybody talks about their chickens.
We have feral peacocks.
Yes, we have feral peacocks and a lot of feral
and Pleasant Garden
foxes and things like that. But so everything, the Lord has just really been. We can see it. I think we both agree. Just how He's moved you towards the brotherhood. Do you think, what do you think about, you're obviously reaching the SILs, but is there a way to reach down to the younger generation this way? Because they're really lost. And the man...
identity confused.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
the fatherhood is not there all the time. And I'm not knocking fathers. I am saying yay for the fathers who are in it. But there is a lot of fatherlessness.
Yeah.
And has been for many years.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. How would I... I just came across a guy here at NRB, a guy named Ben Peterson. And one of the things that he has found is a means to give training to young soldiers. So everyone's they have a lot of sympathy and empathy for the veterans and mental health issues that they're going for. But this other side is the new guys coming in to the military that don't have what he's calling emotional intelligence, EQ. And he knows that because when you talk to these commanders, they're like, dude, these new guys are like, either they shut down or they explode. And they don't really know how to regulate a lot of their emotions. And maybe it's because they've been raised behind screens or whatever the case is, but they need this kind of like emotional intelligence. And so one of the ways, we're trying to think about, okay, how can we, once give them that training, direct them to, all right, where do you go from here? And somewhere like, that digital discipleship that I got was monumental. And so people that want to, learn more on how to be a Christian, at least now we're all carrying things in our pockets where we can get live content that's constantly being broadcasted. Everyone's conditioned now, like if you go to the toilet, you're going to be pulling out your phone. So with that, at least now there's, especially with all of this, there's more healthy options to get that kind of food for your soul rather than, just scrolling through Facebook or any other kind of nonsense. So I'm not really sure what the next step is for these younger guys, but at least there's people like Ben Peterson that are kind of trying to explore how we can capitalize on this environment and make sure that it meets that need.
Do you feel like some of the other brothers struggle with feeling emotions, processing emotions after they retire?
So there's retiring and separating. Retire means you did your 20 years. Separating means you did some time and then you're going to get out.
Maybe
in either case, there's definitely going to be that sense of loss, especially if you don't stay in the San Diego area or the Virginia Beach area. That's where our big hubs are of all of our guys. So they leave, they go back to Montana, Idaho, wherever. Or how are they going to, kind of stay connected and at least feel close to the brotherhood? That's going to be a challenge. The spiritual growth that I've been able to get all throughout my years, through all that discipleship, whether it's from church or podcasts, I think it's certainly like strengthened me, a lot of like mental resolve and fortifying that identity of who am I? I'm not just a SEAL. I've had all these other things that I've been building on. And so my number one priority is to be now a husband and a father and do whatever else God's got me. But that's kind of my major identity, and I don't struggle with that. And it's also nice now that I'm going to be retiring. I know that I'm still going to be able to do these events with Beyond the Brotherhood, still sit by the fire, still get to tell Hell Week stories with the guys. I don't drink, that's okay. It's never been a problem for me. I've stopped drinking in 2008, and I just recognized like just being around the other guys is super healthy, whether they're sloshed or not.
Well, so tell us a little bit. I want to ask 2 questions. What is your favorite all-time wartime movie that we all should watch to understand? And then secondly, tell us a little bit, and then we're going to be wrapping this up. What does prayer look like for you as a father, as a husband?
Sorry, what was that last part?
What does prayer look like for you as a husband and a father, and how do you share it with your family?
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Favorite all-time war movie would definitely be Braveheart.
Oh, yes! It's ours. It's ours. We often quote it. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and as cheesy as this sounds, at my 19 and a half year mark, and I knew this mandate was coming, it wasn't out yet, but I was like breaking out in hives. Like this was the most worrisome thing that I was ever going to do, was tell the Goliath of the entire military that they were wrong. And so I knew this was coming. And then when it finally came out and I was like, all right, I got a weekend to think about it, one more weekend to think about it and rally the other guys who were also resisting, the clip that kept me encouraged was that part of Braveheart, like when he comes to his troops and he's like, what would you give? Let's say you give in. Let's say you surrender now. On your deathbed, what would you give to come back here and tell them to buzz off? And I was just kept thinking about this, like, I could get a fake card. Lots of our guys got fake cards. I could just still at least leave with my DNA intact. But no, this was going to be the hill. This was going to be the hill that I was going to die on, and stand up and tell these guys, you can take it. You can take my career. You can take the pension. You can take all the awards. You can give me that dishonorable discharge. You can take it all, but you're not taking my freedom. So as cheesy as that was still probably very, very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
So for your other question, prayer with my family, I've always heard about this term called doing family devotionals, and I didn't get saved until much later, so I don't know what that looks like. And it was always something that was talked about, but it's rarely ever like the cookies on the bottom shelf. This is exactly what it looks like. So when my second child was born, I was out on deployment. My wife was with her family, and she was recording a little bit about her dad doing devotions with our oldest daughter. And so there was a couple things that I noticed, nice and easy. She was only less than 2 at the time. Doing a little bit of prayer, doing a little bit of Bible study, doing a little bit a story and a song. And so what we do now with all 4 kids is we start off with a song. So we're old school fundamentalists. So we have a hymnal, and we practice the hymns.
And you sing together.
That's so sweet.
Oh, that is wonderful.
Or we do a
powerful.
scripture song.
Right.
So we're King James Bible people, and we've got a lot of scriptures that you can just sing.
I know, and then it is embedded in your brain in a different way.
Yep,
It's wonderful.
Totally. So we always start with that. I started also incorporating scripture memory.
Yes.
So it started with John chapter 1, verse 1. I was like, this is a really good one. We should all memorize this. And then I was like, you know what, let's throw on verse 2. All right, let's just keep going. And so I think we got to about verse 15. And my youngest, he was only 3 at the time, and I told you, he wants to do dangerous stuff. And he's constantly in imagination world, and he's got this little play wooden knife, and he's like constantly fighting dragons, imaginary dragons, as the rest of us are doing the devotions. And finally one day I was like, hey, Lachlan, in the beginning was the word. And he like couldn't really talk until he was 5. And so I'd let him finish the sentence. Okay, in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. All right, and the same was in the beginning, and he would finish it. So he was listening.
He's a kinesthetic learner, right?
Yeah. So he wasn't just fighting imaginary dragons. He was listening, and it was getting in there. So we do the song, we do some scripture memory, we do a Bible story. We've got like a comic book Bible. It's only 3 pages per story. So it kind of like keeps my timeline wrapped up. So the song, the scripture memory, a Bible story, and then we finish with prayer. And I've done everything from the kids are praying to I'm praying for them so they know what Dad's praying for them. And right now we kind of rotate. We've got like a prayer list. And so when somebody comes up and they're like, oh, we need to pray for this, like, all right, Bryden, can you add that to your prayer list tonight? So we all kind of go through different things that we're praying for.
So it's a priority in your family.
And that that takes us about 30 minutes every night. So now we've got a really good routine. My wife would get some solace time by herself. She would clean the kitchen, listen to her own personal podcast.
So you just do this with your children.
And I do the
almost.
devotions with the kids.
That's so good.
And
you
that was
are
it. Like,
such a leader.
that was her big advice, was like, keep it short, 30 minutes. She remembers growing up inside a pastor's house. Sometimes it was 10 minutes, sometimes it was 2 hours. So that 30-minute time limit kind of keeps it on point.
And it gives her that time to do whatever she needs.
Yeah.
You
Most
were
recently,
such a
like
leader.
as of a couple weeks ago, we've started to split. I'll take the girls because they've got more deep questions now. So we still keep it at 30 minutes. And the boys need to still get those Bible stories on a regular basis. So she's doing a very similar program now with the boys, but the girls are kind of like graduated to that next level where they're like asking theological questions. And I want to make sure they know that Dad's got the answers from the Bible to explain to them.
Oh, that is so beautiful, Drew. We are so glad that you've been with us.
Thanks.
And we look forward to all the great stories that we get to hear from you in the future, all the great additions.
Thanks.
And so we thank you for being here.
And the fact that we're reunited through apparently Pray.com.
Yes. Yay. Shout out to Pray.com.
Yeah, that's right.
So blessings on you and your family, and thank you so much.
Thanks,
You really just made an impression on, it was going to make an impression on so many people. So thank you so much.
Thanks.